Hey guys, Chapter 8, China and the World, East Asian Connections. We're going to continue with Section 5, China and Buddhism. Okay, Buddhism was India's most important gift to China. China's only large-scale cultural borrowing until Marxism. And China was the base for Buddhism's spread to Korea and Japan. So it was definitely the most important gift to China from India. Now, Buddhism entered China via the Silk Roads in, first, second centuries. It had little appeal at first, and Indian culture was far too different from the Chinese. There was this thought of the foreignness of Buddhism. When Buddhism first came to China during the Han Dynasty, it was perceived as too foreign or even un-Chinese. And the emphasis on individual salvation and withdrawal into monasteries conflicted with the Confucian emphasis on family and social obligations and relationships to be engaged in making a world a more harmonious place, if you will. Buddhist discussions of infinite time just really fell on deaf ears to this Chinese culture that measured time by generations and dynasties. So it was very different. Nonetheless, Buddhism took root 300 to 800 or so. The collapse of the Han Dynasty around 200 brought chaos and the discrediting of Confucianism. And many nomadic rulers in northern China favored Buddhism. It was comforting. The monasteries provided an increasing array of social services, and the Buddhists appeared to have access to magical powers. Once the Han Dynasty crumbled and collapsed, Buddhism quickly made its way into Chinese society because of the discrediting of Confucianism. Now, Buddhist teachings gave meaning to a world in chaos and explained suffering as a part of life, and monks provided shelter for travelers, refugees, and soon the Chinese from all levels of society turned to the Buddha's message. And elite Chinese began to sponsor those monasteries and even other institutions. And so there was a serious effort to present Buddhism in a form accessible to the Chinese. Buddhist monks made concerted efforts to translate the terms and the concepts of the faith into a meaningful and acceptable message for Chinese society. There was a greater emphasis on patriarchy. And it was the Mahayana form of Buddhism that became popular. There was an emphasis on relics and rituals and deities. And the Mahayana branch of the faith is what really spread in China. A popular form of Buddhism was the Pure Land School, which taught that simply repeating the name of an earlier Buddha would lead to rebirth in paradise, and salvation by faith rather than intensive meditation or study made Indian Buddhism a popular and more Chinese-oriented faith. Now, the Sui and Tang dynasties gave state support to Buddhism. Sui Emperor Wendi had monasteries built at a base of China's 5 sacred mountains. The monasteries became very wealthy, and Buddhism was never independent from state authorities. Under the Sui dynasty, Emperor Wendi, like I said, built these monasteries, used it as a rationale for his reign and his military campaigns, and with state support, the monasteries became important commercial enterprises and amassed great wealth. And the state supervised even the exam system for entry into the monkhood and kept other forms of state control over the Buddhist institutions. Okay, it's a great map here in this brown color. I guess that's brown. That's the 2nd century BCE to 3rd century CE. You guys will see this is the how Buddhism is spreading, right? Origins in green here. This part right here, when it gets to China, right? It's the 2nd century, the third century. But from its origins in India, in the Himalayas, it makes its way south, west, and even east, and over time, eventually, up into China. You can see those arrows show the direction by which it spread. And so over here, like we were talking about earlier, is it being the most important gift from India. It's because Buddhism made its way to Korea and Japan via China. Okay, losing state support. Crisis of Chinese Buddhism. The growth of Chinese Buddhism provoked resistance and even criticism. There's this deepening resentment of the Buddhist establishment's wealth. Many resented Buddhism for a variety of reasons. Wealth, withdrawal, foreignness, the tax exemption wealth that the monasteries amassed due to their commercial activities drew some jealousy from many different sectors. And even the government, because they lost revenues, they were tax exempt. And others did not like the Buddhist ideas about withdrawing from society and celibacy, as they conflicted with the Confucian emphasis on family. So others disliked the foreign origins and even the nature of the faith itself. It was foreign, thus offensive, and it really served an issue for the strong Confucian-based family system. So xenophobia probably started with the Han Lushan rebellion. And in case you're wondering, xenophobia is the irrational hatred or fear of people from other countries. And this Han Lushan rebellion against the Tang dynasty was led by a general of foreign origin, and thus it increased Chinese xenophobia. The Chinese state began direct action against foreign religions, 841 to 845. A series of decrees ordered hundreds of thousands of monks and nuns to return to a normal, tax-paying life. Temples and monasteries were destroyed or taken over, and Buddhists could not use precious metals and gems in their artwork. But Buddhism, there we go. Sorry about that. But Buddhism did not completely vanish from China. It remained an important element of popular religion. And there's even, now I can go on to the next slide. There's even this Chinese proverb: a Confucian thinking cap, a Taoist robe, and Buddhist sandals. And this is a great way to say that all black-haired sons of the Han, which is what they view that as, had elements from all three ideologies that were important in Far East Asia. And they had that within themselves, assimilating Buddhism into the other Chinese thoughts and practices that still existed. And that is the end of section 5.